Have you ever found yourself in a situation where, no matter how much you strive and have faith, nothing seems to change? Perhaps you're praying, trusting, and waiting, but the results don't show up, and frustration begins to build. What does this mean? Is God truly listening, or could His purpose for your life be more profound than we can imagine? This silence, this seemingly endless wait, can be one of the most challenging moments for our faith. It's during these periods that we ask, why aren't the answers coming? Where is God in all of this? What many of us don't realize is that the process, this journey of waiting and silence, might actually be part of the divine plan itself. Instead of focusing solely on outcomes, maybe it's time to understand that the waiting itself is a part of God's purpose for each of us. In this video, we'll explore how trusting the process can transform your spiritual journey. We'll look at how God works even when we can't see the answers and how this trust in the process can bring peace and purpose to each of your days. Stay with me and discover how what you're experiencing today might be shaping something far greater than you can imagine. It's common to feel like our lives are stagnant, especially when facing challenges that seem endless. Maybe you've prayed intensely for a transformation in your marriage, seeking that harmony and connection that feel distant. Or perhaps you're putting all your effort into your job, hoping for a promotion or recognition, yet all you feel is the weight of waiting. This feeling of being stuck, of our actions not making an impact, can be incredibly draining and discouraging. This experience of waiting without seeing tangible results breeds doubts, a subtle skepticism that seeps into our faith, making us wonder, am I on the right path? Such moments not only challenge our patience but also our trust in God. When results don't appear, discouragement sets in, and we may begin to lose the enthusiasm we once had, both in our spiritual life and in our personal goals and plans. Often, this is the point where many give up, choosing to abandon their dreams and accept that things won't change. But what if you knew that this moment is part of a bigger plan? That each phase of waiting, every prayer without an immediate answer, is actually a crucial part of what God is building in your life. This is a perspective we're not always willing to consider. In our modern times, we're used to quick answers, almost instant results. Waiting, then, becomes an almost unbearable obstacle, something we don't understand and often don't want to accept. Understanding that waiting might have a greater purpose changes our relationship with these difficult periods entirely. And this isn't just any teaching, it's a biblical truth. In the stories of many biblical figures, like Joseph, David, and Abraham, we see that God acted powerfully in their lives, but not before leading them through a long journey of patience and faith. Each of them faced years of waiting and uncertainty before witnessing God's plans come to fruition. What if the same is happening with you? Perhaps God is using this waiting to prepare something within you, something not yet ready to be revealed. From this new perspective, waiting ceases to be just a period of inactivity and becomes a time of transformation and preparation. It's a phase where we are shaped, where our strength is tested, and where, ultimately, our trust is strengthened. It's as if the waiting itself is fertile ground where the roots of our faith deepen. For many, this concept might feel distant, but think of common situations where this principle applies. Picture a student who invests years of study before achieving their dream career, or an athlete who trains daily in pursuit of victory. These efforts, often repetitive and challenging, are part of the necessary path toward the final result. The same applies to our spiritual journey. In His wisdom, God knows the perfect timing and often asks us to wait so that we can grow and prepare for what's to come. When we begin to see waiting as part of God's plan, we realize that what He desires for us is more profound than just a quick reward. He's interested in shaping our character, strengthening our resilience, and deepening our faith. He wants us to learn to trust, even when we don't understand what's happening. And by recognizing this purpose, we find a new sense of peace and acceptance in our own journey. So, if you find yourself frustrated today, feeling that your faith is worn thin from not seeing results, I want you to consider this possibility. What might God be shaping within you as you wait? If He hasn't yet brought the answers you so desire, perhaps it's because He's using this moment to prepare you for something greater. After all, trusting the process isn't just about believing that the outcome will come, it's about understanding that the path to that outcome is also part of His purpose. This waiting may be difficult, but remember, you are not alone. We all go through moments of questioning and discouragement, yet by learning to accept and embrace God's timing, you're moving closer to what He wants to achieve in your life. And that's exactly what we'll discuss next, how God's timing works and how we can learn to recognize the value of the process, even without immediate answers. When we think of God's timing, we often interpret it as a deadline, a moment when we will finally see what we've been waiting for. But God's timing goes far beyond that. It's not just the moment we receive answers but the ongoing process He uses to work in us. The purpose of God's timing isn't merely to give us what we ask for, it's to prepare us to fully and consciously receive what He has planned. If we look at biblical stories, we see a pattern. Joseph, for example, received a vision of greatness at a young age. God revealed that he would one day be a leader, yet before that became reality, Joseph went through a series of events that seemed to contradict the promise. He was sold by his brothers, unjustly imprisoned, and spent years living a life that seemed entirely removed from God's promise. But in the end, when Joseph arrived at the palace, he was ready. The waiting and hardships he endured shaped him and strengthened him in ways that prepared him to lead in a way he could not have without the process. And this is exactly the purpose of God's timing. He shapes and transforms us throughout the journey so that we're ready for the purpose He has in store. God's timing acts as a refining process, a phase of preparation where every challenge, every moment of silence, contributes to strengthening our faith and character to meet what He has planned. Rather than focusing only on the destination, we must understand that time is a powerful tool in God's hands to teach us, correct us, and perfect us. Often, when we go through waiting periods, it's easy to think that God is distant or that He has forgotten us. But God's silence is not absence, it's an opportunity to strengthen our faith and make us trust Him, regardless of circumstances. Imagine you're climbing a mountain. At first, everything seems fine, and the end goal appears close and achievable. However, midway, rocks appear, the terrain gets steeper, and fatigue begins to weigh on you. At this point, you start to question why you started the climb and whether it's even worth continuing. Yet, it's precisely at this stage, when we're about to give up, that the strengthening process begins. Each obstacle along the way is a necessary part so that, upon reaching the summit, you experience not only the beautiful view but also the sense of victory and strength gained throughout the journey. God knows our limitations and knows how much each of us can bear. His timing is a way of strengthening us, teaching us to persevere, and reminding us that He is in control even when we can't see what He's doing. Often, we want immediate answers because we're focused on our limited perspective. But God sees beyond, He sees the full picture. He knows that by giving us premature answers, we risk losing the lessons and growth necessary for the next phase of our lives. Another powerful example is David. Chosen as king when he was still young, David did not take the throne immediately. He spent years fleeing, fighting battles, and developing skills that would prepare him to be a great leader. This waiting period wasn't easy. There were times when David questioned what God was doing, yet he continued to trust. In the end, when he finally assumed the throne, he was prepared to lead with wisdom, strength, and humility, qualities that could only be built through the process. For us, trusting in God's timing is a daily challenge. We want to see results, and we're accustomed to quick answers, but true faith requires patience. And it's precisely this patience that teaches us the importance of waiting and the value of the process. Waiting draws us closer to God, for it's in this moment of silence and trust that we rely entirely on Him. Each time we choose to wait and trust, we strengthen our connection with God, and our faith deepens. It's essential to remember that God's timing is not a punishment but a testament of His love. He knows us better than we know ourselves, and He understands what we need to be fully prepared. The journey He allows us to walk is crucial for reaching spiritual maturity and fulfillment. Instead of seeing waiting as an interruption to our plans, we can view it as a growth tool that God uses to shape our character and make us more like Him. So, the next time you feel frustrated by the wait, remember that you're not just waiting, you're being molded. Every prayer that feels unanswered, every attempt that seems to fail, is one more step along the path God is building for you. And this path is tailor-made, designed by the Creator Himself, who knows the exact moment when you'll be ready to receive what He has prepared. In the next chapter, we'll dive even deeper into this idea, exploring how this journey, even in moments of silence, has the power to transform our spiritual lives. This silent journey, those moments when it feels like God is distant, can be one of the most challenging experiences for our faith. Yet, these periods of silence are often the moments when He is closest, working within us in invisible but powerful ways. It's in this silence that He shapes our hearts, strengthens our resilience, and prepares us for the blessings that lie ahead. When we face these silent periods, our first instinct is to seek an explanation or a quick escape. We may wonder, am I doing something wrong? Has God abandoned me? But what if, instead of focusing on answers, we try to see the value of the silence itself? Often, God uses this stillness to help us hear something we wouldn't notice otherwise, the gentle voice calling us to trust, to be patient, and to find rest and peace in Him. These silent moments also reveal the true nature of our faith. It's easy to believe when everything is going well, but the real test of trust emerges when we're uncertain about everything. During these times, we're invited to develop a mature faith, a faith that doesn't depend on circumstances but rests on the character and promises of God. It's a faith that not only seeks results but finds peace in knowing that God is faithful, even when we don't understand His ways. The silent journey is fertile ground for intimacy with God. In a noisy, distraction-filled world, these moments of silence offer unique opportunities for deep connection. They allow us to step away from life's demands and focus on what truly matters. It's an invitation to turn inward and seek God's presence genuinely and consistently. Many who have endured difficult periods share that these silent moments became the most precious times in their lives, where they found a peace that surpasses all understanding. And here's the key: even without answers, the silent journey teaches us to rest. By accepting silence as part of the process, we learn to trust God's timing and His way of working. This rest, in turn, transforms our hearts. It calms our anxieties, soothes our doubts, and helps us see the bigger picture. Because, ultimately, God isn't solely interested in our immediate comfort. He wants to prepare us for something lasting, something with eternal significance. To illustrate this, let's consider the analogy of a seed planted in fertile soil. For weeks, sometimes months, nothing seems to happen. Anyone looking from the outside might think that nothing is growing there. But beneath the soil, the seed is undergoing a transformation. Deep roots are forming, creating a solid foundation that will support the plant when it finally breaks through the surface. In the same way, our faith is rooted and strengthened in these silent moments, establishing a solid foundation so that we can flourish at the right time. Scripture speaks of characters who faced these silent journeys and emerged stronger. Job, for instance, endured a profound and painful silence where everything around him seemed to crumble. He couldn't understand why God allowed so much suffering, yet by the end of his journey, his faith was refined, and he had an encounter with God that forever transformed his perspective. The silence wasn't a sign of abandonment, it was an invitation to deeper faith and a fuller understanding of divine purpose. So, even though silence may be uncomfortable, it's essential for spiritual growth. It's within silence that we learn to trust God's faithfulness, not because we see, but because we believe. This trust, built in silence, becomes the unshakable foundation on which we build our spiritual lives. The silent journey, then, is a hidden blessing, a period where God works invisibly, preparing us for what's to come. As we move into the next chapter, let's explore how this silent transformation enables us to live confidently, even in uncertain times, and how this renewed faith impacts not only our lives but also those around us. It's during the wait that our faith deepens, transforms, and gains new dimensions. Through this process, we learn that faith isn't simply believing that God will give us what we desire. Rather, it's trusting that He is always working for our best, even when we can't see the result. Waiting transforms our view of faith, making it less dependent on circumstances and more rooted in trusting God's character and promises. One of the biggest misconceptions we make is assuming that while we wait, God isn't working. In truth, waiting is an active phase where God is working within our hearts, shaping our ability to trust Him and broadening our vision of the purpose He wants to accomplish in our lives. It's in this time that He teaches us to let go of preconceived expectations, release control, and allow His will to prevail. In this way, waiting becomes spiritual training, where we learn to trust without seeing, to wait without anxiety, and to believe without reservation. Through this process, our faith becomes less fragile. The doubts and insecurities that once held us back start to transform into points of strength. With every silent moment, God is teaching us to depend on Him, not for what He does but for who He is. This type of faith is rare and valuable, for it isn't conditioned by visible outcomes but by an internal certainty that God is good, faithful, and always present. Waiting, then, becomes the ground where this faith is cultivated, growing resiliently and firmly. To illustrate how waiting can transform faith, imagine a tree enduring different seasons. During winter, it seems dormant, without leaves or signs of growth. But internally, it's strengthening its roots and preparing for the arrival of spring. In the same way, waiting strengthens the roots of our faith, preparing us for what lies ahead, for the challenges and victories God has planned. So when spring finally arrives, we're ready to blossom with a much more robust and confident faith. The transformation of faith during waiting also bears visible fruit. People around us start to notice something has changed in us, perhaps through our calmness, patience, or the confidence with which we face difficulties. This change becomes a quiet yet powerful testimony of what God is doing within us. When our friends, family, and colleagues see this transformation, they begin to wonder what gives us this peace, this unshakable sense of purpose, even in the face of uncertainty. Additionally, the faith that emerges from waiting equips us for future situations requiring even greater trust. God knows the stages we'll have to go through, and He uses these waiting periods as training, strengthening our ability to trust and act with faith in times of adversity. Waiting teaches us to persevere, to be patient, and to face each challenge with a firm conviction that God is in control. Therefore, the transformation of faith in waiting isn't just for our benefit, it has a profound and lasting impact that reverberates around us. As this faith matures, we become a light for those going through similar moments of doubt and uncertainty, able to guide them with our testimony. In the next chapter, we'll delve deeper into recognizing the final purpose of the process, even when we're still on the journey, and how this understanding can revolutionize our way of living and trusting in God. When we accept God's timing, waiting shifts from a burden to an opportunity to discover our purpose more deeply. Often, we focus only on the final destination, forgetting that the process itself contains valuable lessons and experiences. The journey God allows us to walk isn't a detour or an interruption but an essential part of the plan. This process, in its entirety, brings revelations that shape our character and expand our understanding of who we are and what we're called to do. God has an incredible way of using each phase of our journey to teach us something essential. Often, these lessons are perfectly tailored to the specific moments we're living through. Every struggle, every prayer that seems to go unanswered, helps reveal the depth and richness of our spiritual journey. Along this path, He exposes areas of our character that need refining, fears that need overcoming, and aspects of our hearts that need healing. In this way, the process is not just preparing us for the destination but shaping us into the person God envisions we'll be when we arrive. Seeing purpose in the process requires a shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we might start asking, what is God trying to teach me through this? This shift opens our hearts to receive the lessons with gratitude rather than resistance. By focusing on growth and learning, waiting ceases to be a frustrating experience and becomes a pathway of personal and spiritual development. Every day, every moment of uncertainty, turns into an opportunity to deepen our relationship with God and to cultivate qualities like patience, compassion, and resilience. In discovering purpose within the waiting, many also find the importance of serving others. When we face challenges, we become more capable of understanding and supporting those who walk through similar situations. God often uses our personal experiences to prepare us to bless others' lives. Perhaps He's molding us to become a mentor for those enduring struggles we've overcome or to be a source of encouragement to someone needing hope. Our journey, however challenging, transforms into a living testimony that inspires and motivates others to hold steadfastly to their path. And it's here we uncover the true meaning of purpose. God is not only preparing us for personal achievement but for a calling that impacts others. The process shapes us, teaching us to be more compassionate, more attentive to others' needs, and more intentional in aligning our lives with divine principles. Each painful or uncertain experience becomes a testament to God's transforming power, showing that He wastes neither a moment nor a tear. As we come to understand that the process itself is part of our purpose, the weight of waiting lessens. We begin to live with the assurance that every phase has its own value and that God oversees each detail. We find peace in knowing that our purpose isn't just in the outcome but in every step we take toward it. This understanding changes how we live. Instead of anxiety, we find serenity. Instead of frustration, we find gratitude. In the next chapter, we'll explore how, after moving through this process, we're stronger, better prepared, and closer to God than ever, and how this confidence radiates into every area of our lives. Once we reach the end of this waiting process, we arrive at a point of victory. But this victory is not simply the achievement of a goal or the answer to a prayer. It's something much deeper than that. The real victory is the inner transformation that happens when we learn to trust God without requiring immediate results. When God finally reveals His answer, whether it's a yes, no, or wait a little longer, our faith has been refined, our trust in His wisdom strengthened, and our vision of His faithfulness clarified. The victory after the waiting period is not an isolated event but the culmination of an entire process of spiritual growth and maturity. During the waiting, we were challenged to trust without conditions, to battle against anxiety and skepticism, and to rest in the certainty that God has a perfect plan for our lives. When the moment of response arrives, this victory is not only a reflection of God meeting our needs but also a testimony of how He has prepared us throughout the journey. This victory, in turn, brings a sense of freedom, the freedom from the need for instant gratification, the freedom to find peace without immediate answers. During the waiting, we've grown stronger in our faith, more resilient in adversity, and more patient in surrendering to God's timing. This new perspective permeates our lives, empowering us to handle the challenges that come our way. Each situation, each obstacle, no longer seems like an unbearable burden but an opportunity to apply all we've learned in the waiting. And as we continue, we'll see that the journey itself, the times of silence, of struggle, and of waiting, was part of God's plan to mold us, preparing us for a future only He can see. Every moment of our journey is valuable to Him, and it's through each step that He's drawing us closer to His heart. This process may have been long, but the victory is sweet, and its impact stretches beyond us, reaching out to touch the lives of others and to glorify God in ways we may never fully comprehend. It's important to highlight that this victory is not solely about a visible outcome. Often, the true victory lies in the subtle inner transformations that occur along the journey. You may experience a newfound sense of inner peace, reduced anxiety, or a refreshed sense of purpose. Perhaps you've noticed growth in areas that once felt stagnant, like relationships, or your approach to work and family. These internal victories are clear signs that God is actively at work, even if the external circumstances haven't yet shifted in the way we might hope. To better understand this kind of victory, consider an athlete undergoing months of intensive training. The process is exhausting and often feels never-ending. But on the day of the competition, the athlete doesn't just celebrate a prize or medal but also acknowledges how much they've grown throughout the journey. The challenges, the intense effort, it was all meaningful. These struggles strengthened the athlete, making them more capable and prepared to reach their goals. In a similar way, our victory in the spiritual journey isn't just about achieving something, it's about the person we become along the way. It's also important to recognize that victory doesn't eliminate future challenges but instead equips us to face them with a renewed perspective. Our trust in God and understanding of His purpose for our lives give us resilience for the trials yet to come. Each victory, each answered prayer, deepens our faith, making us more equipped to rely on Him in every situation. This creates a continuous cycle of growth and confidence, preparing us for all that God has planned in our future. As we conclude this chapter of the journey, we can look back and see how much our lives have transformed. Those areas once filled with frustration and doubt are now marked by the peace that comes from full trust in God. And, perhaps most significantly, we've become aware that the process of waiting and trusting is a fundamental part of our spiritual growth. Victory, then, isn't only about what God has done but also about what He has done within us. Now that we grasp the victory that comes after waiting, let's look at how this victory prepares us to be a light to others, sharing our story of transformation and encouraging those who are still in the waiting process. The true victory in our faith journey is not only what God does for us but also what He accomplishes through us. As we walk through the waiting period and witness the results of trusting God's timing, we are called to share that experience with others. Our journey becomes a living message of hope and encouragement, capable of inspiring those still struggling. By sharing our story, we not only glorify God but also help others to see that waiting is not an obstacle but an opportunity to grow closer to Him. When we're in the midst of waiting, it can be hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The challenges seem endless, and doubt can start to overshadow our hearts. Yet, when we look back at our journey, we recognize that the struggles weren't in vain. Each unanswered prayer, each moment of anguish, contributed to shaping us and strengthening our faith. By sharing this with others, we offer a fresh perspective, revealing that waiting isn't something to dread but rather a vital part of God's plan for our lives. Our story of faith might be the very key to helping someone else overcome their spiritual crisis. When others see how God worked in our lives, how He molded us, and how our faith was fortified through adversity, they may be inspired to keep trusting, even without immediate answers. Sometimes, a simple testimony of perseverance is all someone needs to find the strength to continue on their own path. Moreover, sharing our experience isn't just about offering words of encouragement, it's also about being present in the lives of others. Walking alongside someone during their waiting period can be one of the greatest acts of compassion and love we can offer. Through prayer, emotional support, and practical advice, we can help others navigate their anxieties and uncertainties, showing them that they're not alone. Just as Jesus did, we are called to be companions on the journey, helping each other find hope and trust amidst life's challenges. Through this, we fulfill a greater purpose, not only to overcome but to guide and uplift those around us, embodying the love and light of God in a world that so often feels uncertain and waiting. By sharing our experience, we also learn to be more humble, recognizing that we are not the only ones who go through challenges. Each person has their own story, their unique struggles, and prayers that may feel unanswered. When we start listening to others' stories and offering support, our faith expands as we see God working in surprising ways across many lives simultaneously. Sharing the journey is a powerful reminder that we're all connected, and that God's purpose for each of us weaves into His purpose for others. Furthermore, when we share our journey, we're not just offering words, we're leading by example. The impact of our faith isn't limited to what we say but extends to how we live. Our peace, patience, and trust in God during uncertain times serve as a powerful form of evangelism. By living out our faith authentically, without despair or frustration, we present to the world a true and trustworthy image of God. Those who see our transformed life may begin to wonder, how is this possible? This question opens a door to speak about God's goodness, His faithfulness, and the transformation that happens when we place our trust in Him. Waiting, then, becomes more than a personal period of trial. It becomes a tool to reach others, helping them find the same confidence we've learned to embrace. With our strengthened faith and awareness that we can be a light to others, the next step is to explore how this journey of trust continues to shape a fuller and more abundant life as we follow God's guidance. Let's dive into how maintaining faith in the divine process becomes the key to living in God's peace in all aspects of life. Once we understand God's purpose in our process and share our journey with others, it's crucial that we keep walking confidently in His direction, even after the waiting season. The Christian life isn't a one-time event but an ongoing journey with God, where each step brings us to new levels of spiritual insight and growth. To sustain this trust throughout the journey, we need to cultivate daily practices that keep our faith strong and rooted, regardless of the challenges that arise. The first step in maintaining this trust is constant prayer. Prayer isn't merely a tool to ask for things from God, it's a way to draw closer to Him, to align our hearts with His plan. When we pray consistently, our trust in God deepens because we know He is always listening, always caring for us. Even if immediate answers don't come, prayer keeps us focused on His love and faithfulness, reminding us that God has a perfect plan, even when we can't see the whole picture. Additionally, reading the Bible is essential to keep our trust alive. God's Word strengthens us and gives us wisdom for every situation, reminding us of His promises and how He has worked in the lives of others, encouraging us to believe He will work in ours. The Bible is filled with stories of people who endured waiting and uncertainty, like Abraham, Joseph, and David. Their testimonies reveal that God's timing is never wasted and that, in each waiting moment, He prepares us for something greater. To truly sustain trust over time, it's also crucial to seek support from the Christian community. Sometimes, during a waiting season, we feel alone or discouraged. This is when the church, friends, or even spiritual family can play an invaluable role. Sharing our struggles with those who walk in the same faith helps us stay strong. When others remind us of God's promises and encourage us to keep trusting, our faith is renewed. Fellowship with other believers gives us the strength to press on, knowing we're not alone in this journey. Simultaneously, it's essential to cultivate a grateful heart. Gratitude transforms our perspective on our circumstances. Even in times of waiting, we can find reasons to thank God for His faithfulness, for past blessings, and for the trust He gives us to wait for the future. When we thank God, we acknowledge that He has already worked wonders in our lives, strengthening our faith for what lies ahead. Gratitude keeps us anchored in His love, reminding us that He never abandons us, even in the most challenging times. This trust and gratitude become foundations that shape our lives in peace and resilience. We begin to live with a confidence that isn't easily shaken because it's rooted in the knowledge of who God is and what He has done. Instead of being swayed by circumstances, we are grounded in His unwavering goodness. This inner transformation reflects a life that glorifies God, drawing others to seek that same peace and trust for their journey. Developing a life of trust also involves learning to live with patience. Patience isn't just passive waiting, it's an active stance of surrender to God's process. When we cultivate patience, we allow ourselves to grow and mature without rushing towards what God is still preparing for us. Patience enables us to see the small victories along the way, instead of becoming solely fixated on the end. It teaches us to live in the present, savoring the lessons and moments of growth while awaiting God's answer. Finally, it's essential to remember that trust in God is never in vain. No matter how long it takes or how challenging the wait seems, God always has a purpose. Maintaining trust throughout the journey doesn't mean we'll never face doubts or difficulties, but it does mean that, even amidst challenges, we know He's with us, guiding us every step of the way. As we grow in this trust, our life becomes fuller, more abundant, and more aligned with the divine will. Now that we understand how to keep this trust alive in our journey, we can explore the impact of living according to God's purpose on our lives and how this leads us to true, lasting peace. In the next chapter, we'll look at how trusting in the divine process not only transforms our spiritual walk but also profoundly impacts the practical areas of our daily lives. When we decide to fully trust God's process, one of the greatest transformations we experience is peace, not the fleeting peace the world offers, dependent on circumstances and immediate achievements, but the profound, lasting peace that only God can give. This peace, which surpasses all understanding, becomes the foundation upon which we can build our lives, even in times of uncertainty and difficulty. The peace that comes from trusting in the divine process allows us to navigate life's highs and lows with serenity, knowing that, even if we don't fully understand what's happening, God is in control of everything. This peace begins to manifest practically in our lives. When we trust in God, we no longer obsess over immediate results or the outcomes of our prayers. We learn to rest, knowing that, at the right time, God will answer in the perfect way. This trust helps us manage daily stress, worries about the future, and even the adversities that arise along the way. When we seek and accept God's peace, it starts to transform the most turbulent areas of our lives. Financial issues, complicated relationships, work pressures, and family challenges, all those problems that typically generate anxiety, begin to be seen in a new light. Moreover, living in alignment with God's purpose helps us focus on what truly matters, which is essential for a fulfilled life. Often, we spend so much time trying to control the results of our actions or seeking immediate answers for our needs that we forget to live in the present. When we trust in God, we learn to focus on the process, on the growth and transformation He is working within us. This helps us live more fully, without the constant pressure to achieve perfection or solve everything right away. Living according to God's purpose gives us the freedom to be who we really are, without masks or pretenses, because we know He's shaping our lives in a unique and wonderful way. And the impact of God's peace in our lives doesn't just remain within us, it reflects in our interactions with others. When we are at peace with God, we become more patient, compassionate, and willing to help those around us. The peace we experience in our spiritual journey allows us to be a source of encouragement and support for others facing their own challenges. We are called to be living witnesses of the peace that comes from God, sharing with others the hope and confidence we have in His faithfulness. This creates a network of support that not only strengthens our faith but also helps build a more solid and compassionate community.